I was really obsessed with mind body science. I started getting acting jobs and I loved it. As I played different characters, I watched my physiology and my life shift. And this part of our brain never looks for what's true, it looks for what you believe. And when I started to understand that I had power, that changed my physiology. That sense of being open and receptive is, in my experience, where leadership comes from. That the ego has to be as valuable as a fallen tree or as the waste from an animal. It has to be doing something that is serving. Our physiology affects how we digest. I don't do mindfulness, I do heartfulness. I make sure my heart is open and I make sure it's full of love before I do anything.
Welcome to the Leadership and Love podcast. We will cover leadership, mindset, personal development, and sales and marketing. You will experience thought-provoking conversations with both nationally and internationally recognized leaders. Our goal is to inspire you and deliver actionable items that you can implement that are going to help you accelerate your growth. Get ready to discover the magic and the power when you lead with love.
This episode does touch briefly on topics like abuse and suicide.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Leadership and Love. I am super excited. We have Karen Lorre with us today, and I've been following her on Facebook, and she puts out just some amazing content with such positive, upbeat, happy energy. And Lorre, first off, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Louie.
Karen Lorre helps you to have your body, subconscious mind, and conscious mind all aligned with what you want, as you can win in all areas of life. Karen studied mind-body science at the University of California, then became an actress. Acting was the perfect petri dish. I love that word, petri dish. Acting was the perfect petri dish for Karen to put that mind-body science into action. After having done over 1,000 hours of television and film, that's impressive all by itself, Karen discovered how much power we have over our own physiologies and lives and put that knowledge into use, helping thousands of people transform. Karen is also the international best-selling author of 3 books, Chronic Pleasure, I love those titles, Effortless Enchantment, and Chronic Pleasure in Relationships. Karen's work has been endorsed by Deepak Chopra, Bruce Lipton, Gay Hendricks, and many more. By the way, that's some heavy hitters right there. And if you haven't read the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, I highly recommend it. Bruce Lipton says Karen Lorre is an antidote to the pain of today's world of personal and global chaos. And Deepak Chopra, another real heavyweight, says Karen Lorre's love radiates to you. I couldn't agree more, especially from your Facebook stuff. You can trust that Karen is the real deal. She embodies chronic pleasure and teaches you to do the same thing. So again, I'm so blessed that you're here, Karen, and so grateful. And so before we jump into your expertise, I'd like you to share with the listeners, because I've seen some of this from your social media, and don't think, for those of you listening, that your social media can't have an impact, because hers is having a huge impact, and it's what made me invite her onto the podcast. But I'd like you to talk about the career, how you started as an actress, and then kind of the transformation, because I think it's very powerful that people hear your story of how you've led yourself through this journey.
Sure, but first, thank you so much for having me on your show, Louie. I really appreciate it. And hi, everybody. I was really obsessed with mind body science when I was in high school and junior high and elementary school, only because every time I got sick, my mom would say, did anybody hurt your feelings today? Or do you have a big test or something like that? And I'd say, yeah, that happened. And then I'd feel better. And I couldn't believe how much better I would feel. And as a kid, I hated that she did that because I'd have to go back to school. But it triggered a very deep curiosity in me about how the mind affects the body. So I studied that at UC Irvine, and then I never stopped studying it. I started getting acting jobs and I loved it. And I did, my first job was in Mexico for 5 weeks, and I didn't speak any Spanish, but I was around all these people who didn't speak any English, and my ear got attuned. So I don't speak perfect Spanish, but I can do pretty well. But so I did all those were commercials, and I had little parts. And so I thought, well, I should take an acting class. I was still in college, and I thought I should take an acting class. And I took this class, and I felt like, when the light shines on you, where it feels like it's such a divine feeling. I mean, there was no like lights in the room, but I felt this incredible feeling. It felt so good. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. Acting was amazing. I couldn't believe it. And so then I really loved the mind body science, and I really loved the acting. And I was like, what do I do? And I was driving one day, and this voice said, do you want to live a life of letting other people tell you what to do? Or do you want to live a life of adventure? And I thought, oh, adventure. I already
Yeah, exactly. I pick adventure.
yeah, and I had already sailed to Hawaii when I was 18, so I have this thing. I worked in Montana when I was in high school, even though I grew up in Los Angeles just for the summer. But I have this thing for adventure. Adventure is an energy that I crave, actually. So I thought adventure, and I knew right then that I had made the decision to be an actor. And I got really clear as I was driving home, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be an actor. And the next day I was out to lunch with a friend, and I said, I'm going to be an actor. And he said, oh, fantastic. He goes, you got to get an agent. I said, what is an agent? He said, they get you acting jobs. I said, oh, that's great. I go, how do you get an agent? He goes, you got to get a manager. I said, what is a manager? And he goes, they get you an agent. And I was like, okay. I was really naive because I was in like the science world, right? So I was like, okay. So I walk out of the restaurant, I'm waiting for him. And this woman walks up to me, and she says, are you an actress? And, I'd made the decision the day before. So I was like, yeah, kind of like, and I'm not sure, but I just said yes. And she said, my name is this, and here's my card. I'm a manager. Give me a call. I really want to talk to you. And I was like, thank you so much. And she's yelling, make sure you call me tomorrow. While she walks in the thing as he's walking out, and he said, what happened? And I said, oh, she's a manager and she wants me to call her. And he said, Jesus. That's kind of how I got into acting. And then I just loved it. I loved auditioning. I loved acting. I loved what I used to call was the connection molecule. I mean, I was young, right? So, but I would feel like I was in the connection molecule when I was acting, because there was such a depth of connection. But the other thing that was so fascinating was, as I played different characters, I watched my physiology and my life shift. And so with every character I played, my relationships shifted, because I didn't know how to disconnect from the character. So I was kind of bringing the character into my life. So my relationships got affected differently by each character I played. My physiology would shift. If I was playing a victim, which I played a lot of because I had more victim energy back then. When I was playing a Vic, I would have hyper anxiety. And so my body would just be pulsing with anxiety, like a lot. And then when I would get a job where I was a mom and was loving mom or something like that, or a lawyer or a doctor or a vet or whatever, my physiology would change. I was playing this Russian doctor spy, and I had this so much energy, and I had to do kickboxing. I didn't know how to do kickboxing, but I got choreographed and I did it. And, I just had so much fun, and it was amazing to watch the shifts in my body. And that's what I mean by the acting was the perfect petri dish, because every character you play has a different thought process. They have a different history. They have a different way of being in the world. And when you're acting and you're embodying those different aspects of a character, the world shifts, and one of the things I know from science is that we have a part of our brain, it's called the reticular formation, or some people call it the reticular activating system. And this part of our brain never looks for what's true. It looks for what you believe.
Wait, say that again. Say that again, please. That's a golden nugget. Please repeat that.
This part of the brain, the reticular activating system, or the reticular formation, depends on who you talk to, what it's called. It never looks for the truth. It looks to corroborate what you believe. And so as I was, different characters have different beliefs, right? So as I was playing different characters, I saw only the things that the character believed would be true in my life. And then I'd get a different character and I'd see the things that they believed would be true in my life. And I was like, oh my God, this is not, there's no reality, or there is a reality, but it's not, we're not seeing it, you know, one of those.
Right.
And
Well,
so it's really fascinating to me. That was fascinating. So it's been a life of curiosity as well as adventure.
so that is fascinating. I want to share something with you. I knew, and I haven't talked about this on my podcast ever, but it's here. So when I was a little baby, before I could walk and talk, I remembered I was somewhere before here. I couldn't remember where there was, but I remember there was somewhere before I got here. The other thing I did as a kid, and it's fascinating because I've been intrigued with the brain body connection most of my life too. I played trombone in the high school band, and so it was horrible to forget my instrument because there wasn't an extra trombone at school. So at night I'd lie awake in bed and I'd say trombone 10 times. I'd go trombone, 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 and I'd fall asleep. And the first thing that popped in my brain in the morning was trombone. And
Right.
so, and so I'd like you to talk about the energy that you were feeling with each character, because I think people need to understand the importance of that. Those thoughts create energy, right? And then that energy creates a vibration. And then bam, here all these things are in your world. Can you talk about that, please?
Yes. First, I love that you knew, you know, that you'd been somewhere before. I had that same thing. I used to run really fast down the hall to my parents' bedroom where they had a big mirror along the closet, which was right along the hallway. So I ran as fast as I could because I was trying to see who I really was. I knew I wasn't that little body. So I was like running as fast as I could. And I would also go run around houses to look to see the fake stuff behind it, because I knew that what the houses were showing me wasn't really what was true, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the energy of different characters. So every character, every person, just looking, I mean, characters are people, hopefully. I mean, depends on the character you're playing, but most characters are people and they're written to be believed as a person. And so in order to play them, you want to understand, you know, what their whole purpose is, what's in the way, what, I mean, it doesn't have to be so intellectual, but this is part of it, you know. What's their history, what's their relationship with every person, how do they feel about these different people in the character or the people that they're talking about. And when you start to see that there's so many decisions about each character that have happened, and you realize that we each as human beings have made decisions often when we're tiny, when we're little kids. We're making decisions about the world that we might not even remember, but because of that reticular activating system, those decisions then become what we see. And so with the characters that you play, you're playing a different character, you've got a different set of belief systems, a different set of relationship, things, a different set of how you carry your body, a different set of how you carry your face. Like there's so many different, even makeup or no makeup, like there's so many different aspects to it. And then it's like you're, as actors, you, for me at least, like felt like it opened up this capacity to realize that the world is what you make it, that the world is how you believe it to be, not how it is. And so I don't know, is that answering your question? It's a little
It is, because I think that you hit the nail on the head, because you're absolutely right. That energy comes from what happened to us as a child and the choices we make in the moment, right? And then that creates that energy. For those of you that are listening, we're in pretty deep right off the bat. So if you're not familiar with the reticular activating system, it's at the base of your skull, at the back of your head. And one of the things I like to share when I speak is I'll ask people, right now, think of your right foot. And before I say right foot, you weren't thinking of your right foot, but you might be aware that your shoe's tight, that it's hot, it's cold, it's sweaty, whatever it is. But before I put the right foot thought in your brain, that information goes in, but we're not really consciously registering it. So that's what she's talking about with the reticular activating system and why it's so important. And so as the character she was portraying, she'd put in these thoughts and their life experiences that would make the decisions and inform that performance. So now I'd love for you to talk about how you made this, how you led yourself from this almost what some people, and I believe everything's connected, right? It all has its reason, it all has a purpose. So please tell the audience how you led yourself from being a full-time actor into what the work that you do now.
Well, I did not lead myself well. Let's just say this, because I grew up with a lot of trauma, and I did not know how to heal the trauma. I'd been to therapists for 30 years and they didn't help, and doctors and all that stuff. And I basically had struggled. And so acting was great as a cathartic thing, but it didn't heal anything. It just helped me access them and to use them, which I don't think is really that healthy. Anyway, so I ended up getting very ill, like physically. I had undiagnosed narcolepsy, which I got when I was around 3 years old from a head
I'm
injury.
sorry, what's narcolepsy?
Narcolepsy is where you fall asleep during the day and you're awake during the night. And some people have something called cataplexy, which is like a seizure kind of thing. And you don't ever get deep sleep. So I
Okay.
had narcolepsy, and I had anxiety, panic attacks, bipolar. I had a lot of stuff going on, physical pain that was so debilitating, because when you have abuse as a kid, not I had abuse from all these neighbors and different people in my life, a church pedophilic minister. I mean, that was not his role. Like, he wasn't, maybe he was hired for that because the church was involved. Anyway, so there was just a lot of nefarious things happening. And my body, I learned this actually from a court case. I got out of the court case. It was against that church. I got out of the court case because it was going to make me kill myself. I was suicidally depressed. And one of the things that the lawyer said to me is, "Do you have physical pain?" And I said, "Oh my God, all the time." And he said, "That's a sign of abuse." And so, even though I didn't understand it at the time that he was saying this, later I ended up getting divorced because all of these things were impacting my ability to have a relationship and impacting my ability to function. I was falling asleep while I drove. I would drive even to the grocery store, and I might have to pull over, 10, 15 times just to get to the store. And I fell asleep at lunch, right into the food. Oh, it was bad. I fell asleep on camera at an audition, and on camera on a film. And so I was mortified. So I did not think I could ever act again. And it was not a place of leadership. And what ended up happening for me was I had a spiritual awakening where I realized, like, I saw my life pass before my eyes. I was in my living room. I wasn't dying that I know of, but I saw everything. And people who were supposedly dead, like my dad and my ex-boyfriend, Johnny, who had killed himself, both of them came to me and started to teach me. And Johnny had killed himself. We had met because we were both suicidal when I was in my 20s. And we had this bond because we both wanted to kill ourselves, like, very healthy. And and he did it. And so I was talking to him, and I said, I mean, he was coming to me, and I didn't realize it was him for a while. And then I started to realize, oh my God, you're here. And we started talking. And one time I said, "Johnny, aren't you in hell because you killed yourself?" And he said, "Oh, Karen, there's no hell." And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Everybody talks about hell. And my dad is right there energetically. They're both dead." My
Right.
dad says, "Crowd control." And like, that's why hell is. I said, "Why does everybody talk about hell?" Crowd control. And so they both started to sort of train me how to live like a dead person. Meaning, and this sounds terrible, but it's great, actually. It's meaning how to be in that place where you're completely known, you're completely loved, you're completely understood, you're completely accepted. You are invited, you are welcomed, you have power. And when I started to understand that I had power, that changed my physiology. All those psychological things went away. All the physical pain went away. I realized that my subconscious had been running me throughout my life and through my marriage. And I started to heal the subconscious. And I healed the narcolepsy. I don't have that anymore. I mean, it's just off the charts. I had to take medicine for all these different things, and I got off all the medicines. I fired all the doctors. They were great. They were trying to help, but they just weren't. And I fired all the psychiatrists, and that's how I ended up getting my sense of power back and my sense of leadership. And I realized, one of the things I realized is that every person who was helping me was not healthy themselves in some way. And when I saw that, I realized that you cannot transmit, they could not transmit something to me that they didn't have.
Ho, 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 ho. Repeat that. There's another golden nugget, please.
You're so cute.
I'm serious. That's a golden nugget.
Yeah, they didn't have, there was something that they didn't have. Either they weren't healthy emotionally or they weren't healthy physically. And you cannot transmit something you don't have. So if you don't have health, you shouldn't be helping people get health. If you don't have good relationships, you shouldn't try to help people have good relationships until you're healed. You got to actually heal it. And so I thought, I've got to really learn how to transmit what I want to share with the world. And I wasn't trying to be a coach or anything like that. I just was starting to heal myself, and my body was shifting so fast that I literally just put up a Facebook post that said something like, this is what it used to be like, this is what it's like now. If anybody wants to work with me, send me a message. And I got a person that day, and then she told other people, and she kept coming, and it just started to happen. It wasn't like I made a choice, I'm going to do this. It was that. And part of the way I understand leadership, and now this is particular to me, but it's how I see it, is that this is going to sound weird, but I follow what I call my spirit. And I'm not religious. Even that church I didn't go to, I just went to the youth group of that church. But I'm not religious. This is more of a spiritual kind of understanding, but I follow the impulses that my spirit gives me, which puts me in a place of being led to have a really healthy life, to have really healthy relationships, to have a really healthy body, and to be out of the way. The way I lead is by being out of the way. So that energy of love, that energy of consciousness, that energy of power and freedom and joy can flow through me. And so I don't have to do it. That's why, like, I coach people, but I don't get tired coaching people. People say, oh, coaching is great, but I get so drained afterwards. And I'm like, that's because you're doing it. Stop doing it. Let it flow through you. Let yourself open up and flow. Let that energy flow through you. That sense of being open and receptive is, in my experience, where leadership comes from, in a way.
So I've got to, man, you're on fire. So I want to share with the audience. There's two things she just talked about that I want to make sure you catch. The first one is, and this is pretty wild, but I had a very traumatic childhood as well with sexual abuse. And I just recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was the keynote speaker for a suicide prevention fundraiser because I was 5 minutes away. I was 5 minutes away from taking my life, and it was a miracle. It was a miracle, divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. And so I want everybody that's listening to know that it doesn't matter where you start, and how Karen found her way out and how I found my way out are different paths. So it doesn't have to look the same, but there's always a way out. There's always a way from the darkness to the light. She's living proof of that. For those of you that are listening to this podcast and not watching, she's physically beautiful, healthy. She looks very vibrant. Her hair, her eyes, her skin, she's the epitome of what a healthy person is supposed to look like. And she's got that brightness, the light in her eyes. The other thing she's talking about, and this is what motivated me to start this podcast, is the power of love. And I want to be clear for our audience, I'm not talking about sexual love or romantic love. I'm talking about the love that's always here. And I love what you said about, about getting out of the way, because it's the same thing. I share with people, when I do presentations, I surrender to what it's supposed to be. And 3 or 4 minutes into it, I feel the hair in the back of my neck stand up, and we're off to the races. And I tell people, if you saw me speak and I walked off stage and you held a gun to my head and said, Louie, repeat it, you'd have to shoot me. I practice much like you probably did when you're acting, right? You rehearse the lines, you do all that, but then you drop into this moment where you're just being, and it flows. I've had the same experience. I'm a guitar player in a band. I've had that same, where the energy moves through me. I've had people at the end of the night said, man, Louie, you're unbelievable. I said, that wasn't me. That didn't come from me. That just flowed right through me. So I'd like you to give our listeners some advice, and what do you share with your clients when you work with them on how to drop into, because a lot of it's about control, right? A lot of leaders want control and power, which is an illusion. How do you coach your clients into let go of those things, and more importantly, drop into that inner knowing, that inner peace, that inner power?
One thing that I realized for myself is that the ego, people will try to get rid of the ego. They'll say, they'll say the ego's bad, or the ego keeps me stuck, or everything's coming from my ego, or something like that. But what I realized once is like, God, when you look at nature, there, a tree falls and more trees come up through it, from it, or an animal dies and all the creatures eat it. Different levels of creatures eat it, and you realize that there's nothing wasted. The nature is so good at capitalizing on every single thing, so that there's never any waste. And even the waste of animals feeds the soil, right? There's just nothing, unless it's being done in a CAFO, concentrated animal feeding operation. That kind is not healthy. But when you're out in nature, the
Right.
animals, they just fertilize everything. So
Right.
it's easy.
Yeah, the grass doesn't have to strain to grow.
Right. The grass just grows, birds just fly, trees just come up from acorns, right? It's insane how effortless it is. And the thing that I realize is that the ego has to be as valuable as a fallen tree, or as the waste from an animal. It has to be doing something that is serving, because I don't believe God would, or that which created us, that took one sex cell from your mom and one from your dad and created trillions of cells that are differentiated, not just sex cells. They're hair cells, eye cells, finger cells, nail cells, nerve cells, muscle cells, right? There's everything. I thought, how can the ego be negative? I remember when they used to say DNA, there's DNA, and then in the nucleus of the cell, there's junk DNA. And I was like, that can't be junk. How can that be junk? And it turns out it's the microbiome of the DNA. And so, like, to me, the ego became my focuser. I could see that it could focus on what I did wrong, or what somebody else is doing wrong, or it could focus on opening up to that love. And so I just basically said to my ego, will you focus me towards my spirit? And then I would, help it when it got off track. And it just became super easy. So that's one thing, is understanding the ego. And the other thing is the energy of that spirit. When you look again at nature, it's beautiful, it's expansive, it's creative, it's innovative, it's diverse, it's abundant, it's free, it is really persistent, it is knowing. There's a lot of knowing. You just I watched a horse be born, and he just, like, the mom licks him for a few minutes, and then he just starts running. He knows how to run, right?
Right.
Like, he's knowing that is happening throughout nature, and it's awe-inspiring. And that feeling, that vibration of appreciating something like that, it could be, doesn't have to be nature, it could be playing music. When people really are playing, like you're saying, you're out of the way and you see this thing. And sometimes I've talked to musicians who are watching their fingers and going, holy moly, I'm not doing this, right?
Right.
And so you go, oh wow, how do I get into that? Well, you get into that by finding something that you can appreciate. So before you go speak, or before somebody goes to play music, or before somebody goes to make a phone call to customer service, spend some time recognizing the glory of how your body works. I mean, like, our bodies are amazing how they're designed. The thoughtfulness and the consideration that has gone into making these bodies so that we can walk, so that we're breathing all night long. You know, pretty much all creatures, their heart or whatever it is that is pumping through their system. Some creatures don't have hearts, which is amazing. Like, but just in terms of humans, our heart pumps for us all night. Like, we wake up and we wake up, and the sun is there. The sun is there even when it's raining, or even when there's a hurricane, or even when there's a storm or snow, or it's night. The sun is still shining. It never stops shining. So if you can find something that makes you feel appreciation for that makes you feel appreciation for anything. It doesn't have to be anything. It could just be the fact that you're alive, that you can see, or that you can hear, or that you can touch and feel. Like, we are given so much capacity. And so that appreciation is a very similar frequency to that experience, or that frequency of what I call our spirits. And so that's how I get into it. I just find something that is awe-inspiring to me. I really love to connect to that energy of being in that state of appreciation and love. And so that helps people get out of the way.
So that's very powerful. So again, she's touched on a couple of really powerful things, and actually, I've had a paradigm shift just from the conversation. So thank you for that, because I've kind of been at war with my ego for a while, and so I've got a whole new way of looking at that. But she's absolutely right. We can let our ego head us down the wrong path or the right path. The other thing that Karen was talking about that I think is so powerful is appreciation, and I've really, in the last 7 or 8 years, come to really appreciate the amount of luxury we live in, right? I mean, we take so many things: fresh air, fresh water, heat in the winter, air conditioning in the summer, and those things. And I love your mindset around gratitude and appreciation. One of the things that always fascinates me is our ability to use our eyes to see something on a page. We can read it, and from our eyes goes to our brain, and then we know what the author was trying. That's unbelievable to me, right? That we can do that. And when you think about, like, all the bones it takes just to move your legs to walk, and think about, this is one of the things I thought about recently. I appreciate my feet a lot. I mean, I spent 20 years in the Marines, and I have walked God knows how many thousands of miles, and God bless me, they're still at the end of my legs. They still work just fine, right? They get me wherever I want to go. I want to talk about a couple of things, and I really love your heart and your passion around this, because it's where I live too. It's so flippin' cool. One of the things that I want you to talk about now, and you talked about, I don't eat pasta, I don't eat bread, and I share with people that my diet is really around ingredients, one ingredient: apple, broccoli, those kinds of things, no processed food. I want you to talk about your experience and what you share with your clients because this food energy thing can screw up that connection to the flow and that energy. Would you talk about that, please, and why that's so important, and again, how you help your clients through that?
Yeah. I started, as I was getting more and more aligned with my spirit, I, started to love people, because you can't not love them when you're in this alignment. And I saw that everybody was so sweet. I kept seeing the sweetness, and I liked sugar, and I was trying to eat something that I liked, and it was boring compared to the sweetness of life. And when that happened, the sugar just fell away from me. And then I was still eating grains. And then I saw that every time I ate grains, I needed a nap. This is just my body. Maybe everybody else's body is going to be different. But with my body, I saw I'm not having any energy when I eat grains. So I let go of grains. I haven't had sugar or grains. I haven't had sugar in 17 years and grains in 15 years or something like that.
So I'd like to interrupt you for just a second. I want, as listeners and leaders, I want you to understand something that she's talking about here that's very critical, and she's very wise and very intuitive. She said for her body, everybody, to her point, has its own uniqueness. We're all these individuals. And so you really want to be aware and in tune with your body. I'm very aware when I put something in my body that it doesn't work, my body lets me know. But if you're constantly polluting your body, that messaging, that signal, that intelligence is not heard. Your brain doesn't get it. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted them to understand how, and I really appreciate that you said for your body, because some people, my grandfather drank alcohol into his 90s and then died of a brain aneurysm, and it was never from the out, right? And that I'm not condoning alcohol. That's not what I'm saying. I just want people to understand that their body's different, but they got to be wise enough to be in touch with that energy of what their body's telling them.
Exactly. And what I've noticed is that there's some people, like I was vegetarian for 27 years, and then my body started craving more energy. And then this is going to sound really weird, but the cows at the grocery store that were already dead started talking to me. I was already talking to the dead people, so it was not that much of a, but they said you should eat us, and I was listening, and I thought, okay. I said, I don't even know how to cook you, and they said, we'll show you. So these cows, I bought some steak, and they showed me how to cook it, and it was good, and my body started to get more energized. Now I have clients who are vegans, and that's okay if they are eating. The only thing I said is, why don't you cut out the grains, see how you feel if you cut out the grains, and instead eat something like nuts and seeds instead of the grains, and see if you can not eat processed foods. Most of the vegans I know that I don't coach are eating tons of sugar. So he, like my vegan clients, they're doing what they can do. Like I would eat, if I, instead of rice, I would eat cauliflower rice. It's easier to cook, it tastes better, and it's not rice, which is a grain. Anyway, so I stopped eating all grains, and then I basically just help people listen to their body. How do you feel when you eat this? Be present. Like when you're eating, I don't even have a TV, but turn the TV off if you're watching TV when you're eating, and just pay attention to how you feel as you're eating this. Does your body feel more energized? Like I'm drinking bone broth. Every time I drink bone broth, my body like goes, oh my God, I love this. So I drink a lot of bone broth, right? So it's really listening. What does your body, and the thing that's tricky is sugar and grains and processed foods all create addiction. And
Say that again, please.
sugar, grains, and processed food, meaning food that has multiple ingredients and often things like seed oils and stuff, they create, they're designed, processed food is designed to create an addiction. Even vegetables and fruits have been bred to have more sweetness to them. So when you're eating that stuff, it's hard to know, am I drawn to this because of an addiction, or am I drawn to this because it makes my body feel good? So the way I have found this for myself is that I want to feel good before I eat it. I never would eat. Like if I had a negative feeling, I would not eat. I would wait. I would do something to change my feeling. I haven't had this in years, but I used to. It was like, okay, I feel really bad. I'm going to do something that makes me feel better. I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to jump on, I have a little mini tramp that makes me feel good. Or I'm going to, sing a song, or I'm going to write out a dream I have, or whatever. I would do something else before I ate, so that when I was eating, I was in a good place, because our physiology affects how we digest.
Okay. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're just dropping these great pieces of wisdom and these golden nuggets. Please repeat that again.
If people eat when they're upset or focused on something upsetting, let's say you're watching the news or a show that has some, upset to it, it affects how you digest your food. It affects how your blood flow is working. I mean, our bodies are so impacted. I mean, you can think of something. This is especially easy for men. If a man thinks of somebody that they're attracted to, and they get very focused on that person, they're going to get a physiological reaction. And women might also get a physiological reaction if they're thinking about something. And another way to do it that's more general is that if you think about something, it could be like a lemon, cutting a lemon, into a quarter and then smelling the lemon and then biting on the lemon. I already feel that little
Right.
bit of tartness right there. And I don't have any lemon. I have bone broth, which has no lemon in it. Right. So it's really, it's paying attention. You want to feel good before you eat it, feel good while you eat it. So you're not doing something distracting. You're not having a difficult conversation, etc. And you want to feel good after you eat it, and not just directly after, but pay attention for the next few hours. Does your energy increase in a hyper way, or does your energy increase in a balanced way? Really pay attention.
And so she just, man, you're just knocking it out of the park. So what she's talking about here is mindfulness, right? Just being present and being aware. What's the state of mind I'm in right now? I'm about to eat. And this is one of the things, this is so powerful, Karen, because there's so many emotional eaters in today's society, right? They're eating their way into obesity, into sickness, because they want that fix. They want that addiction of sugar, salt, whatever it might be. And so she's talking about something very powerful. And as a leader, I want to tie this together because and she said something else I want to go back to as well. But as a leader, I want you to understand that what she's sharing with us is just so precious, because the best way you can lead others, and most importantly yourself, is to have good, high energy that doesn't peak and crash. And when she talked about, and for those who listening and not watching, she gently sloped her hand up, that your energy should gradually go up. It shouldn't skyrocket, because at some point, if that's sugar, caffeine, those kinds of things, sends you right up to the moon. But unfortunately, within a shorter period of time, there's going to be a big crash. And when you're in the middle of that, that's when you're mean to people. That's when you're rude. That's when you have no patience. You have no tolerance. It's not how we want to lead. That's not how you lead from love, with that kind of wacky energy going up and down. It's that gradual, steady energy that you put in. I also want to talk about something else. So for those of you that are on this call and thinking Karen's woo-woo, she's out there, I can tell you that we can all hear the voice of whatever you want to call it. God, Allah, Buddha, source, universe. And it's there. We have to be quiet, and we have to be open, and have to realize, much like she said about the ego, we can aim it towards the positive. You have to understand you can hear the voice. I want to share something with you, Karen. When I first started meditating, and this was probably 27, 30 years ago now, my father came to me, and he had passed. And I was brand new to meditation, and my dad came to me, and it just freaked me out, right? It freaked me out that, oh my gosh, here's my dad. And so then I went back to the meditation, and I calmed down, and my dad came back to me again. And the wisdom that my dad gave me was, he said, give it away as fast as you can. And we were in a conversation. And people, you can think we're nuts, but I can tell you this is possible for all of us. So I asked my dad, I said, Dad, give what away? He said, love. He said, as soon as you give it away, you're instantly refilled. You cannot ever run out of it. And that's and that's changed the complete trajectory of my life, to what you're talking about, of how we can be in relationship, we can be in business, we can be in the gym, we can be everywhere and still be this thing called love.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I love that. I love that. And I have to say, I know it does sound woo-woo what I'm talking about. The cows are talking to me, my dad. Yeah, I get it. It's so woo-woo. But on the practical side, the first law of thermodynamics is that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed. So that's one thing. And then on the other practical side, just in terms, if you talk to people and they say, "Oh, my grandma just died," and you say, do you feel your grandma around?" "Oh yeah, I feel her all the time." And these are people that are not spiritual. These are just people at the grocery store that are just, almost everybody. I mean, I've talked about this with so many people, people at the car wash, like just, just, they're saying, "Oh yeah, my such and such just passed." And I'm like, "Do you ever feel them around?" And some people say no, but I'd say out of the people I've asked, and these are people I don't know most of the time, 80% say, "Oh yeah, I feel them," or they see the energy if they're there when the person dies. That energy is they feel it in the room. And I also have people come to me when I meditate. I have them come to me when I'm not meditating, driving everywhere. But it's so great. Yeah, I've also been meditating, and it's such a great thing because meditation calms the mind, calms the waters of your being, so that you can hear that voice. If you feel like you don't ever hear that voice.
Say that again. I want you to say that again, because that is worth the price of admission.
You're so cute. I love it. Yeah, I really appreciate, you're such a good listener, and you're so supportive and enthusiastic. It's just beautiful. But meditation calms you, and it's kind of like if you're looking for the sunken treasure and you're in a stormy sea, it's going to be harder to find it because everything's kicked up and it's hard to see underwater. Like, you don't go scuba diving. I mean, you can, but it's harder to go scuba diving and see anything when there's big winds and lots of activity and waves. And it's much easier to see everything when it's a calm body of water. And meditation can help people really learn how to let go and how to relax. I've been meditating for 35 years, and it is amazing. It's fun. It's not the only thing that helps. I need more than meditation, but I love meditation. It's something I do twice a day.
Yeah, me too. And again, I like if you're listening and you're a leader, when people ask me what's the one thing you could do that changes the entire game, it's meditation. And I completely agree with you, Karen. Meditation changes everything. The other thing I'd like to share with you is, if you're of the praying persuasion and you pray, what I share with people is this. Prayer is us talking to whoever it is for you, God, Allah, Buddha, I don't care what you call it. But prayer is us talking to God. Meditation is us shutting up and listening. And I love your analogy of a turbulent sea. You can't see the bottom of the ocean in a turbulent sea. And that's our mind when we're constantly going. We're feeding it with social media, the TV. I don't watch TV. People freak out. I don't have a TV. I don't watch TV. And they're like, what do you do with your time? Well, I read books. I play music. I write. You know what I mean? I meditate. I do yoga. There's lots of the things you could. And people ask me, how do you get so much done? I tell them, I don't watch TV. It's the truth, isn't it?
Right. I mean, I love being on TV, but I really don't watch it very often. I mean, I don't even have a TV. I will watch it. Like, my mom lives in a place and they have the TV on sometimes, so I'll watch it with her because she wants to watch it. We watched Octopus, My Teacher, last night. That was so good. It was a documentary. But yeah, you're so right. And it's that learning how to really stay calm. The other thing I think that helps for leadership that I find really key is having, when your own house is in order, great events will pass for you and for others. So you have to have your house in order, meaning, you don't leave dirty dishes in the dishwasher or in the sink. You don't, you just make sure that you're organized and you're neat, you're taking care of yourself, you're healthy, you're being present to the world. But the other thing is composure. So composure. So I was this screaming baby was reaching for me, and mom was right in front of me. So I just held my hands out because baby was crawling over her shoulder, and I just held my hands out. The baby crawled into my arms, and I was calm, right? And so I'm just looking at the baby, and he just calms right down. And the mother said, "How did you get him to stop crying?" And I said, "I didn't." I said, "I was calm, so he could be calm."
And so I'd love to share a story with you. And so you've brought out some really cool things that I haven't ever talked about on the podcast and rarely talk about at all. My middle granddaughter was just a demon, right? The first one was an angel. The second was just out of control. And we were at a funeral. And the second one, what I would hold her to my chest, and I would just start to breathe with her. When she breathed in, I breathed in. When she breathed out, I breathed. And I would just sync my rhythm of my breathing to her breathing. I'd match her breathing. And we were at a funeral, and she was on her mom's shoulder, and she was just out of control, screaming, crying. But she did the same thing. She put her hands over her mom's shoulder, and I took her, and she just calmed down. And my daughter said, "How do you do that?" And I said, if you pay me, I'll tell you. So, Lorre, this has just been a wonderful conversation and fascinating. There's a couple of things I always like to end with. The first one is there anything I didn't ask you that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, you did ask me, and I don't think I shared it, which is the thing about heart set. So I don't do mindfulness. I do heartfulness. I make sure my heart is open, and I make sure it's full of love before I do anything. And the way I do that, if this is your heart, if you can see it, I've got my thumbs together and my hands out with my fingers spread. If you practice with your heart open and you keep feeling your heart open, you'll know if your heart starts to close. And so I pay attention. I used to, at the beginning, my heart would just be closed so fast, but I learned to have discernment so I could feel, oh, it's starting to close, let me open it up again. And the opening it up had to do with breathing, meditation, appreciation. I've written 3 books, and there's tons of other exercises that are in the books that you can do that all open up your heart. And that, to me, when somebody has an open heart, they're more out of the way. There's no ego involved. I mean, there's no of the traditional kind of ego involved. Like, my ego is meant to keep my heart open. So there's no of that. There's none of that criticism that goes on you or anything. And your mind becomes more quiet when your heart is open. So that's something that I think is really key. It helps with that composure and that sense of confidence and that sense of authority in your own life, so that you can then transmit it to the people that you are wanting to lead.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So that leads me to my next question. What's one book that you've read that changed your life, and why?
There's a book by Daniel Ladinsky, and it's a compilation of poems by Hafez, who is he was a poet in the, I want to say 1200s or 1300s in the Middle East. And it's called I Heard God Laughing. And I would read those. Oh, there's another one too. I'll share this other one. These are poem books. The other one is Love Stories from God. And it has all these different spiritual leaders who went through hell and then became love. And it's so inspired. I mean, one girl, she was her parents were murdered. This is, again, she's in the Middle East somewhere, and she's 5 years old, and she's sold into slavery in a brothel. And then she has some spiritual awakening, and she's just writing these poems all about love. And it's just like, and it's just crazy. So both of those books, they have poem, and I find, for me, poetry, at least in the way those people write their poetry, both of those are translated by Daniel Ladinsky, I believe. Poetry really penetrates me in a way that logic does not. I feel the poetry. So that's why I like both of those books. They both, and I have other books too. I think Rumi is a fantastic author and poet. And so there's lots of other things I read like that, but those two, I read them, I have read them like over and over and over again. And every time you read a poem, it has a new meaning. I mean, I think that happens with regular books, but there's something with poetry where I feel it deeper as I read it more.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I remember being a freshman in high school and being made fun of because I was a guy and I loved poetry. And there's always been this magic for me with words and how, the rhyme and the rhythm and how they fall together and how they could just stir so much emotion, right? And the beauty of it, I think, for me, is that it paints a picture that's only in my mind. The picture in your mind is going to be completely different than the picture that it's been painted in my mind. Right. And at some point you go back and it might be a completely different picture that's painted by exactly the same words. So, Karen, if people want to, so let's start with the cool thing. So if you want to go check her out and watch her on TV, what's some things that you've been in?
I was on One Life to Live. I played Tina for 4 years. So I think that's on the soap opera, whatever. I don't watch it. So that I did Tina for 4.5 years. I've done X-Files, NYPD Blue, Dharma and Greg, Malcolm in the Middle, Sabrina. If you're young, a lot of young kids like Sabrina.
Yeah. So So, and I ask her that question only because I want you to understand as a leader, the possibilities of what you can morph into and really reinvent yourself, right? And you kind of started with it. It was almost like it was running in the background the whole time, but at some point it just came to the forefront, and being an actor kind of took the back seat. So, where can people, what are the titles of your 3 books, and where can people find them?
Well, you can download all my books for free, and the link, and maybe you can put it in
We
on the.
will. We'll put it in the meeting notes. Yes.
Okay. So the link is chronic, CHRONIC, pleasure, PLEASURE, book. It's singular because I started out with just one book, but now I have 3. chronicpleasurebook.com. And there's all 3 books are there. And you can download whichever one. The first book helps you. It's called Chronic Pleasure, and it helps you let go of pain and fatigue, have more energy. The second book is a memoir, only because my publisher wanted to know details. And then the third book is Chronic Pleasure in Relationships. And that's because I met a girl, she was Miss America, or no, she was Miss Universe. And she was so beautiful, and she couldn't get a good guy. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing. Let's talk to women, you know?
Yeah, yeah. If,
So
if people would like to reach out to connect with you, to work with you, or to learn from you, how can they do that, Karen?
my email is at the end of each of those books.
Okay, perfect, perfect. And one of the things I said at the top of the show that I'd like to reiterate for our listeners, I can tell you that it was really easy for me to want to have Karen on the podcast because everything I've seen her do on social media, whether it's been a video, whether it's been a post, a picture, whatever it may be, I could feel the energy. And so I want you to understand that everything that we do has energy behind it and connected to it, and it never goes away. And Karen, I'm truly humbled and grateful to have you on the show. And thank you for sharing your heart and shining your light in the world, because you're making a huge difference. And I want you to know there's 2 or 3 things that we talked about that have completely shifted my paradigm on some things. And so God bless you. I love you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Louie. Thank you, everyone. I just so appreciate you. And Louie, you're just amazing. Wow, you're a great listener, and I can really feel how you care so deeply about people. So thank you so much. I feel honored to be with you as well.
Thanks again for joining us and listening to this episode of Leadership and Love. I would like to challenge you to ask yourself, what's one thing that you heard today that you can implement immediately to improve your leadership and accelerate your growth? If you've gotten value out of this episode or learned something that you can implement today, we'd ask that you please share it with those that you care about. Our goal is to create more leaders who are leading with love.